My wife, who has been my partner for 38 years, has been unfaithful to me for the past 17 years. She has been having an affair with her Aramok Refreshments district manager for approximately 2 years. Before I provide further details, it is important to understand the context. There is a history to this situation, and I believe it is essential to have a comprehensive understanding of the circumstances before forming an opinion about whether my wife was justified in her actions or if I was simply repaying a debt from 2012. In 2012, my wife underwent a tonsillectomy at a local hospital. She was unable to bring her personal belongings into the surgical room, so I was given her items to hold. However, her phone was not returned to her. I accessed her emails to ascertain the identity of the other party with whom she was communicating. I discovered a series of inappropriate emails, including references to the book 50 Shades of Grey. She had also been reading this book and referring to the male character as her Christian Grey. This was a term she used to refer to me. I was angry and demanded answers, but she was unable to speak after surgery. Consequently, on the drive home, I provided her with a piece of paper and a pen to answer my questions. She wrote that there had been no sexual contact. I then took 2. A year has elapsed. I removed the evidence from my briefcase of clothes and went on a weekend getaway with my support team, my best friend and his wife, to avoid contact with my wife. Upon my return, I was informed that my wife had deleted her email account and that she would not engage in such behavior again. However, several years later, I was still unable to move on from the incident. I was determined to exact retribution for the betrayal she had inflicted upon me. I felt that this was the only way to progress from the situation. I began a relationship with a client who showed me attention. We began exchanging text messages while my wife would socialize with her friends and engage in leisure activities. I would leave my son with my mother and visit this woman. After approximately 9 months, the woman I was having an affair with informed me that she was pregnant. My immediate reaction was to play Usher's song Confessions Part 2, in which the singer confesses his love for his partner. I then proceeded to tell my wife the news. She reacted in a relatively calm manner, stating that she had an idea and that God was on her side. In preparation for this eventuality, I informed her of my intention to divorce her and to pursue a new relationship with this other woman. She suggested that we attempt to reconcile and that we attend church more frequently and seek pastoral guidance from the pastor. I was presented with an opportunity to salvage the marriage, and I was reluctant to decline it. I subsequently informed the pregnant mistress of the plan. I had assumed that we were going to embark on a new life together. However, I was soon informed that my wife was pregnant with our 3rd child, just 3 months after the birth of our 2nd. She wanted to feel more secure about the other woman, so she essentially forced us to have another child together. In December 2014, I became a father for the 3rd time. It was a rapid succession of events, but I am grateful for the opportunity to be a father to my 3 children. My wife and I have faced challenges along the way, but we are committed to raising our children in a loving and supportive environment. I have learned a great deal from these experiences, and I am proud of the way we are raising our children. I have been faithful and committed to rebuilding our relationship. From time to time, I am absent from home due to work commitments, as is my wife. I recently discovered that for the past 2 years, she has been engaged in an affair with her boss. This has involved numerous instances of her spending time with him outside of normal working hours, including happy hour events, overtime, and trips to San Diego. On Valentine's Day, he was in Portland, where he spent the evening with her in a hotel room. I discovered this information when she went for drinks after work. I inquired about her expected time of return, and she informed me that she would be home at 9 p.m. However, when 9 p.m. arrived, she was not present. I attempted to contact her several times, but she did not respond. Instead, I received a text message with a photograph of her with another woman. I was informed by the worker that she was simply purchasing a few additional drinks before departing. I found it peculiar that she was capable of sending me a text message but unable to provide me with a telephone call. I then proceeded to examine the photograph in greater detail, focusing on the napkin that was situated on the table. This allowed me to ascertain her location. I subsequently drove for 45 minutes from my residence in order to locate her. Upon arrival, I discovered her at a bar, accompanied by her superior. He was holding her in his arms. I approached them and they were Both were visibly shocked to see me. My wife was quick to say goodbye, but I was still in the room and had only just arrived. I asked her if I had interrupted something, and she informed me that she had closed her tab and was leaving. I remained with her boss, who was visibly intoxicated. He began discussing his wife with me, sharing that she did not pay much attention to him and that they did whatever they wanted. This was the first time he had made such remarks. I encountered this individual, who proceeded to inquire about my marital infidelity. I informed him that I had not engaged in such behavior, but that if I did, it would be a rather unpleasant experience. He then ordered another drink, and I observed my wife contacting him on numerous occasions. I found this behavior somewhat peculiar, particularly given that he then proceeded to leave the bar, ostensibly to the restroom, but in fact to another destination. I then proceeded to leave the bar and return home, where I had a plethora of inquiries for my wife. Her response was that she was sorry and should have informed me that he was present with us. I have never been the jealous type, and a friend advised me to examine my phone records. Upon discovering that she had been conversing with him on Monday through Friday after work for 15 to 30 minutes at a time, I confronted her with all that. She also informed me that after work, she has end-of-day reporting to do and that he needs those numbers to report to his boss. This was a particularly convincing lie, given that she is not on a salary and clocks in and out. From the perspective of the HR department, reporting numbers after clocking out would be considered illegal. I needed proof of their conversations, but I decided to recorded their conversations. The method I employed to do so is not relevant to this discussion. Once I had heard the content of the conversations, I was devastated. My wife had been discussing with her cousin the excitement he brings to her life. She also talked about how funny and goofy he is. She also said that I was foolish to believe that the end-of-day calls were real. She said that it was evident that they would have to adopt a low profile for a while. However, there was a conversation between the two of them in which they discussed their love for one another and the effect they have on each other. This conversation left me deeply affected. I was enraged, but I was unsure of how to proceed. I considered approaching their HR department, but my wife had recently been promoted. I was unsure if I should tell them that she was the reason for the promotion. I avoided contact with her boss and instead contacted his wife. I conducted extensive research with the assistance of a reliable source, contacting her on LinkedIn and providing her with the information I had uncovered. She subsequently contacted me, and I informed her of the circumstances. We subsequently established a relationship and have enjoyed a positive connection for several years. During this time, we have been aware of the deception perpetrated upon us. Despite numerous attempts, I was unable to reach her. However, they both eventually admitted their involvement, even after the recordings were released. I am now faced with a dilemma: should I remain with my children or leave my spouse, given that the financial obligations resulting from my actions have been settled. My spouse is attempting to reconcile with me, but I have already relocated and am responsible for transporting our children to school each morning. Despite her assurances that she will not repeat her actions, I am unable to trust her. After 2 years of loving another man, she allowed him to gain access to her heart and body. This raises the question of whether I should seize the opportunity to leave her and start a new life, or remain in the relationship to ensure that my children are raised in an environment free from further deception. After days of introspection, I finally resolved to take action. I had endured betrayal, deceit, and lies for 2 years. The pain was profound, the wound fresh. I could not remain silent. I could not allow my wife and her boss to. I was determined to ensure that my wife and her boss would not get away with their infidelity without facing any consequences. To this end, I began to plan my revenge. My first step was to gather solid evidence. I had recorded their conversations and obtained screenshots of their inappropriate messages. However, I needed something more damning. I then recalled that my wife had given me one evening, while my wife was asleep, I accessed her phone. I discovered explicit videos of her with her boss. It was difficult to accept seeing my wife with another man, but the videos provided the evidence I needed. I transferred the videos to my laptop and deleted them from her phone. I then waited for an opportune moment to act. This came a few weeks later when my wife had a presentation at her office and her boss was supposed to be there. I knew that they usually connected their laptops to a large screen. For presentations, I therefore devised a plan. I uploaded the videos onto a USB drive and managed to swap it with my wife's presentation USB just before she left for her meeting. As the presentation began, I slipped into the back of the conference room unnoticed. My wife connected the USB to her laptop, and the explicit video started playing on the big screen. There was a collective gasp in the room, followed by an awkward silence. My wife turned pale, and her boss looked like he was about to pass out. I stepped forward, holding up the evidence I had collected. I informed everyone in the room about their too. In the aftermath of the extramarital affair, I exposed the lies, deceit, and betrayal perpetrated by my spouse. I concluded my address by stating that I had already submitted all the evidence to the HR department and the board of directors. The consequences were swift and severe. My wife and her superior were dismissed from their positions without delay. Their reputations were irreparably damaged, and they became social outcasts. The humiliation they endured was palpable, and I derived a sense of satisfaction. I had finally exacted revenge. I filed for divorce shortly after my wife implored me to reconsider, promising despite her assurances that she would change her ways, I was resolved not to give her a third chance. I had previously extended her a second opportunity, which she had ultimately squandered. I was determined not to repeat this mistake. I relocated and concentrated on raising my children in a nurturing and supportive environment, despite the challenges posed by our fractured relationship. Over time, I was able to rebuild my life. I secured a new position, forged new connections, and even initiated a romantic relationship. It was a gradual and arduous process, but I emerged from it with enhanced resilience. As for my former spouse, my wife experienced significant challenges in attempting to rebuild her life following the breakdown of her marriage. She lost her employment, her reputation, and her family. Ultimately, she also lost the man she had claimed to love. My experience serves as a cautionary tale for others, highlighting that infidelity is a conscious decision rather than an inadvertent mistake. It is a choice that can have far-reaching consequences. The ramifications of infidelity extend beyond the individuals involved. It erodes trust, devastates relationships, and fragments families. Regardless of how discreetly one attempts to conceal infidelity, the truth inevitably emerges. I am a 34-year-old man married to a 30-year-old woman. We have been married for several years. We had 2 children together, and I believed that I had found the love of my life and the best friend I could have hoped for. We enjoyed a happy and loving relationship and discussed everything together. I assumed that I would be with her until the day I died. We married when we were young, and at the time, she was focused on becoming a homemaker and mother. She had a couple of part-time jobs. I was employed intermittently, but consistently the primary income provider. Following the birth of our children, my wife experienced significant postpartum depression. I was too young and inexperienced to encourage her to seek professional assistance. There were periods when I worked 10 to 12-hour days, then returned home to prepare dinner, care for the children, and clean the house on weekends. I also managed all the laundry and grocery shopping. I was consistently the primary caregiver while she was recovering. In 2019, she finally sought professional assistance from a therapist and psychologist, resulting in a diagnosis of bipolar disorder type I. Following the birth of her second child, she expressed a desire to pursue a career in nursing and eventually become a midwife. I offered her my full support, suggesting that she begin her studies as soon as possible. I also indicated my willingness to assume the role of a homemaker once her income reached a sufficient level. She subsequently enrolled in school and obtained her CNA certification while working part-time. Over time, and while also attending school full-time, I once again assumed the role of primary caregiver, working full-time while managing domestic responsibilities. When my wife was home, she would often engage in leisure activities, such as gaming on her personal computer. In 2022, I was offered a significant promotion that would require me to relocate across the country. My wife and I discussed the matter and ultimately decided that it was an opportunity that was too good to decline. During this conversation, she expressed her desire to take a leave of absence from her studies and employment in order to focus on supporting me and our children through the transition. She acknowledged that there were periods when I was the primary source of stability and resilience in our family, and that she wanted to begin repaying me for that. We ultimately relocated at the end of 2022. I was the first to relocate, followed by my wife and children a month later. The company provided financial assistance for our relocation, eliminating the need for my wife to arrange packing. They also hired a moving company to handle the logistics. During my time in the new location, I began following OnlyFans on social media and became increasingly preoccupied with this online activity. I eventually spent approximately $1,200 on this pursuit. My wife discovered this while traveling and expressed her disappointment. We engaged in a heated discussion about this matter for approximately a month. My wife advised me to delete the account immediately and refrain from accessing it again. I complied with her request on the night she discovered my online activities and have not accessed the account since. My wife seemed to have moved on from this issue. My only source of support was failing, and we were enjoying ourselves immensely, exploring and becoming acquainted with the new area. My wife was attempting to learn SQL and Power BI reporting while the children were in school, stating that she wished to secure a remote working position. She had also commenced attending a local D&D game every Wednesday night, following my encouragement. It should be noted that for approximately 3 to 4 years, we had employed the use of the term swinging as a form of foreplay. While we were never particularly serious about it, it served as a source of sexual arousal within our intimate relationship. My wife initially exhibited a lack of enthusiasm for this concept, but she eventually developed a strong interest in it. This occurred in late February of this year, during a social gathering. My wife encountered a new acquaintance who extended an invitation to a Star Wars-themed tabletop game, which occurs on a weekly basis. Upon returning home, she informed me of this invitation and also commented on the individual's physical attractiveness. I inquired if she wished to engage in sexual activity with him, to which she replied in the affirmative. She expressed a desire to discuss the matter further and establish ground rules in case, despite the initial enthusiasm, no further action was taken. The following Friday, however, she chose to spend time with him, having first sought my approval. I gave my consent, though I was taken aback when she handed him her phone, allowing him to record me. I had assumed that I would enjoy this arrangement, but I found it utterly disagreeable when my wife returned home. I informed her of my feelings and stated that I did not wish for her to engage in this activity again. She expressed her disappointment, citing her enjoyment of the experience, but asserted that nothing was worth jeopardizing our relationship. I inquired as to whether she would remove this individual from her social media platform and cease participating in the associated gaming groups. She concurred immediately. There were intermittent disagreements over the following weekend. On Sunday, she informed me that she was distressed at the prospect of losing the gaming events. I concurred that she could attend the games, but requested that she not be alone with this other individual. She assented. Over the subsequent month, we engaged in intermittent conflict. My confidence was severely undermined, and I was in need of her support to rebuild it. However, she was reluctant to provide it. Approximately 1 month later, on a Wednesday, she left our children, aged 10 and 6, at home alone to attend D&D early. I informed her that this was not an appropriate decision, but she simply stated that the children were fine. Later that night, after D&D, she informed me that she wished to go out for drinks with one of her friends from the group. She subsequently proceeded to consume beverages with one of her acquaintances from the social circle. I advised her that it would be preferable for her to return home, but she disregarded my counsel and remained out until 3 a.m. She had her location sharing enabled, and I observed her loitering in an unidentified parking lot for approximately an hour at the conclusion of the evening. When she finally returned, I was incensed by her actions. Despite my repeated attempts to contact her, she ignored all my messages and calls. She then informed me that she had simply wished for a night out with friends. The following morning, she revealed that she had been seeing another man for approximately a month and that she loved him. She also stated that she had sent him inappropriate messages, spent time with him while the children were at school and I was at work, and had slept with him. Within hours, she informed me that our marriage was beset with far more significant issues and that I had lost my zest for life. She concurred to terminate the game nights and to sever all contact with this other individual. I departed that weekend to return home and spend time with my family while I was away. She proceeded to smash our glasses and plates. She stated that she had committed the act instead of causing herself harm. Additionally, she expressed a desire to attend the gym while the children were at home. I informed her that she was not permitted to leave them unattended. In response, she indicated that she would continue to destroy items when I returned. She then stated that she wished to terminate the relationship. I attempted to salvage the situation by expressing my desire to work on the marriage, but she was unwavering in her decision. Following approximately 3 weeks of continuous conflict, I discovered that she had opened her own bank account, been applying for employment, viewed a number of properties and arranged for a lawyer to be retained on an ongoing basis. She informed me that she wished to end our relationship. I informed her that she would be free to do so and that I would not seek to prevent her from doing so. She expressed gratitude and regret for her actions. She stated that she would endeavor to ensure that I have contact with the children as frequently as possible. I requested that she refrain from contacting this other individual as a favor to me in order to maintain my dignity. However, she asserted that this was not about him. It was a Friday and we informed the children of the situation. They were visibly distressed and wept for approximately an hour. Once I had regained my composure, I proceeded to pack my belongings and depart the residence. I planned to stay with my cousin, approximately 2 hours away. Upon reaching my cousin's house, I informed her of the entire series of events. She inquired about my intentions and the guidance of my instincts. I disclosed that I still held feelings for my wife and wished to strive for the preservation of our marriage. She advised me to pursue this course of action. I drove back home and called my wife ahead of time to inform her that I needed to retrieve an item of significant personal value, after which I would depart. I returned to my residence and retrieved my wedding ring. I informed my wife of my enduring love for her and my commitment to fighting for our marriage. She did not respond. She was occupied with cleaning the kitchen, which was an unusual activity for her. I subsequently departed for my cousin's residence. While I was at the house and stopped for gas, my Ring camera went off. I observed my wife moving her car into our yard to create additional space in our driveway and then unplugging the Ring cameras. I contacted my eldest child to ascertain the situation at home and was informed that my wife was entertaining friends by playing games. It is notable that the other individual in question oversees the aforementioned games. Upon my return to the residence, I observed that none of the participants from her gaming group had yet arrived. My wife greeted me at the door, wearing makeup, which was an unusual sight. Upon recognizing me, she became visibly displeased and inquired as to the reason for my return. I proceeded to the children's bedrooms and requested that they put on their socks and shoes. The younger child proceeded directly to the vehicle, while the older child appeared confused by the situation. My wife was reluctant to relinquish her hold on the older child and contacted the police. The officers informed us that they were unable to intervene, but suggested that we attempt to resolve the situation for the remainder of the evening. I proposed that I and the children remain at the residence. I remained in the residence and her acquaintances did not visit. My wife concurred once the police departed. She then expressed her disdain for me and inquired about my intended departure date. I informed her that I had no intention of leaving. She then relocated the children to her room and secured the door. I remained seated on the couch throughout the night. The following morning, she accompanied the children to breakfast, where she did not return. Additionally, I have been summoned to appear in court to address her allegations of domestic abuse. This week, she has contacted me on 6 occasions requesting to meet with her lawyer and mediate. I have informed her that I am willing to do so, provided that I have legal representation. She permitted me to see my children for an hour last night in a food court mall with supervision. I inquired as to whether I could take the children to church that Sunday, but she replied in the negative. She then sent me a text message an hour later, asking if I would pay for childcare for the children after school because she needed to find employment. In the face of such adversity, it seemed as though the world had conspired against me. I was thrust into a state of emotional distress and humiliation. The initial shock of betrayal was eclipsed by the constant fear of losing my children. Despite the tumultuous circumstances, I resolved to remain resilient. A peculiar sense of calm descended upon me. I was driven by a singular purpose, to reclaim my dignity, my children, and to heal my wounded heart. I sought the counsel of a renowned divorce lawyer in the city, known for his unconventional yet effective strategies. He listened to my story with a countenance that betrayed no emotion. He tapped his fingers on his mahogany desk and muttered, "This is a case of betrayal and manipulation, my dear friend, but don't worry, justice will be served." Time passed in a blur. The court battles were intense and exhausting, yet I persevered. There were days when I was on the verge of giving up, days when the sight of my children's tear-streaked faces was too much to bear, but I held on. As the court case progressed, my lawyer and I presented a multitude of evidence about my wife's infidelity and her newfound disregard for our children's well-being. There were periods when I was on the verge of abandoning my case, particularly when I observed the distressing effects of my wife's infidelity on our children. However, I persisted in presenting a compelling array of evidence to the court, which detailed my wife's unfaithfulness and her alarming disregard for the well-being of our children. My wife's transformation shocked everyone, including the court, as the final hearing approached. My lawyer presented me with an unexpected plan, which was an audacious strategy that could make or break my case. However, I trusted him and we proceeded on the day of the final hearing. The court was filled with anticipation, and as my lawyer rose to present our final piece of evidence, the room fell silent. He then turned to the judge and said, "Your Honor, I request a recess of 1 hour. We have a witness who..." The judge granted the request and we waited as the hour mark approached. The doors of the courtroom swung open and a woman entered. Her face was hidden beneath a broad-brimmed hat, but she seemed familiar. As she lifted her hat, I saw her face and was struck by a jolt of recognition. She was the woman from OnlyFans, the one I'd spent so much money on. My heart pounded as I realized the gravity of the situation. She took the stand and began her testimony. She explained how she was an actress hired by my wife. My wife had. She looked at me and I was overcome with a sudden, powerful recognition. It was the woman from OnlyFans, the one I had invested a significant amount of money in. My heartbeat accelerated as I grasped the gravity of the situation. She proceeded to take the stand and began her testimony, explaining how she was an actress hired by my wife. My wife had. The woman presented undeniable evidence in the form of texts, emails and recorded phone calls, which revealed my wife's deceit. The courtroom was in an uproar and the judge called for order, but the murmurs continued. My wife looked at me, her face pale. She was trapped in her own web of lies. In the end, I was granted full custody of my children. My wife was ordered to undergo counseling and granted supervised visitation rights until she could prove she was a fit mother. I was vindicated, but the victory was bittersweet. Life proceeded apace. I secured gainful employment and a new residence for my children and myself. My children began to recuperate from the trauma, as did I. We discovered contentment and tranquility in our new circumstances. I persisted in hoping that my wife would recuperate and resume her role as my partner. As for vengeance, it was not about retaliation or inflicting pain, it was about disclosing the truth and securing justice. The unexpected turn of events had been a shock to everyone, including me. Ultimately, it was about preserving my dignity and safeguarding my children's future, and in that I found my revenge. I am grateful for this outcome.